Now that you have got a basic idea about what arrays are, the next thing that we need to understand is how to create arrays, right? Or rather, how to create objects which have a array data structure, right? So for that, you can use the numpy dot array function to create the arrays, right? And when you see the numpy dot array function, you will see that there are certain parameters that it has got, right? Out of that, a very important parameter which you should note is the D type, which is basically to fix what kind of data should the elements be having. So if you want to have float, then you have to adopt D type is equal to something. If it is integer, then you have to initialize it in a different way. So basically, if you want to initialize the array with a specific data type, this particular parameter is used to provide that data type. Okay. Now, there can be four ways you can create a NumPy array, right? The first way, which is probably the most, most popular way, is to create an empty array, right? Empty array means you just get the structure, huh? You just get the positions which are like declared, right? And you have to fill up those positions or the elements with certain values, right? So that is the empty array. Otherwise, what you can also do is you can pre-fill the array with certain values. Okay, so we'll see later on that even you can use a specific list and convert that to an array, right? Or you can just, while initializing an object as an array, that time itself you pre-fill with values, right? Next is you create a particular array or an array of a particular shape or a particular set of dimensions which is pre-filled with ones, okay, with the value 1. Or the fourth type is, again, you create an array of a specific shape which is pre-filled with zeros. So these are the four different ways how we can uh, create an object of array data structure, right? Now, when we look at the creation of the arrays, let's not, let's go to Google Colab and try to figure out how to do that, right? So, first of all, it's very important. We need to import whenever we use a NumPy, any library in Python, we have to import that function. So basically, import NumPy is the keyword to be used or is the syntax to be used. And what we can also do in Python is we can always alias that library name with a short name. So in that case, whenever we want to call any particular function for that library, what we can do is we can just use this short name instead of the full name. And that short name itself is sufficient to create or to call a particular function of that library, right? So now we have imported the NumPy and we have imported that using that alias np. Now, let's see first how to create an empty array, right? So how do we do that? So let's initialize an object obj1 is equal to np dot, okay, np means numpy dot. What we can do is we can use the empty keyword, right? uh, empty, okay. And then what we do is we have to see, if you just see, the different parameters are shape, so you have to give the shape of the array, the data type, either you can, the default data type is float, or otherwise you can give any specific data type like int. So we will give a specific shape here. So let's initialize an array with 2 rows and 3 columns. So the first dimension is of that of the rows, the second dimension is that of the columns, right? So once we do that, and if we just do a print of this obj1, we will be able to see what is there, Okay, so let's run it and see. So see here, you will see that you have an empty array. This is almost, I mean, though you see a specific number here, it is almost equal to 0. E to the power minus 316, right? So it is almost 0. So anyways, so we get an empty array. But if we want the arrays to be pre-filled with specifically zeros, that also we can do. How can we do? Obj2, say for example, is equal to np dot, okay, and here we can use the zeros, okay, the zeros function, and then again we have to give a shape and the data type, same thing, shape data type, right? So I just give it a shape. Okay, so shape, I again use the same shape, 2 comma 3, so 2 rows 3 columns, and here I just give the d type. So d type, and d type I can use, what d type should I use? What are the different options? I just, let me use int. Okay, let me simply use int as a data type. Okay, and then again I do a print of obj2. Let's see what is coming as print of obj2, right? So now I have created. So here, see, first of all, we have given a data type is equal to int. So all the values which are coming are integer values. Second thing, since we have specifically instantiated with all, or rather defaulted with all zeros, so here you don't see such a small number here. You see all zeros, exactly zeros. Okay. So then I also create one more object, say obj3 is equal to np dot, and then we give ones. So instead of zeros, I want to instantiate, or rather pre-fill with all 1. Okay, so let's do that, and the shape again, let's retain the same 2 comma 3. Okay, or rather let's this time make it 2 comma 4. So 2 rows 4 columns, let's see that. Okay, so we are done, and then let's again print the obj3. Let's run it. So we run it. See, here we haven't mentioned the data type, so it has taken the default data type, which is float, and it has defaulted with all the values 1. But now 1 is not an integer value, it's a floating point or decimal value, right? So this is the third type. We talked about 4 types, right? We talked about all being zeros, defaulted with zeros, all being defaulted with ones, empty array, and the fourth one was pre-filled array. Let's try the fourth one now. So let's create a fourth object, object 4, and here let me mention np dot array. Okay, so np dot array, and again if you see, you can give the object. So here it is not, the first thing is not the shape, it is the object, because we want to have a pre-filled array. So what is the object? We have to give the specific value. So let me give specific value, say 23 comma 56 comma 48. Okay, so that is one row, and then again we give one more row, say 34 comma 12 comma 92. Okay, so this is what we give. Then we can either give a d type is equal to something, or we can leave it. So let me give a, let me leave it first. Let's see what is coming as default. So print obj4. Okay, let's see what comes in here. So it is giving, so data type we have to mention, because it is not having any default data type. So let me give it a data type. So d type is equal to int. Okay, so we give it. So now again it is throwing error. What is the problem? So here, see, I am giving these two things, but I need to, this is a two-dimensional array I am trying to declare here, but I am giving only one set of square brackets. So that is not what is expected. So d type, now we have given the full thing. We have given the d type, and we have given the data in the right format, right? So now it is giving me the right array. So the first one I had an empty array. Okay, the first one I had an empty array. The second one I had a zero initialized array. The third one I had a one initialized array, and the fourth one I had an array with pre-filled values. So these are the four ways for array creation. Okay, there is one other way to create an array. Okay, and that is creating an array with random values initialized. Okay, how to do that? Let's see. So let's create a fifth object 5, and let's use again the numpy library. And there is a function in the numpy library called random, and for random again I need to call either random or randint or rand. Okay, so let me call the randint. Okay, so once I do randint, it will generate all the random but integers. Okay, and here I have to give the or let me first try with not the randint. Let me first try with the just a random function, random.random function. Okay, that's the most basic type. Now here again, just like the earlier cases, we have to give the shape. So let me give again the shape 2 comma 3. So this will create a array having 2 rows, 3 columns, and initialized with, or rather filled with, random values. Okay, so let's do that. So print obj 5. Let's see what is coming here. So see here we are getting the values, different random values. Now just let's note the different values which are getting initialized. 0.155, 0.995. Let me run it again. You will see different numbers being generated, right? So let's see. See, now it is coming 0.826, 0.797, and the others are also different. So this is the way to generate random numbers as a part of the array initialization. And here you need to note one more thing. The array which I was creating, the empty array, see it is getting defaulted, the values defaulted with the last values which were appearing, right? So this is another thing. So if you are not assigning any specific values, any default values, it gets the values which gets filled up. I mean, either junk values gets filled up. I mean, it gets filled up with junk values, or some values which are being stored in it. Okay, in the same memory locations, right? So that's why it is very important to initialize or default with either ones or zeros when we are creating an array. Empty array creation is fine, but in that case we need to be very careful that ultimately in the subsequent part of the program, each and every element is being populated with a valid value. Otherwise what will happen is some residual values from the past operations will stay back, and it might cause a problem, right? So this is a thing. Now, let me see one other thing. Once you have created an array, or once you have an object which is of array data type, how do you retrieve the dimensions of that? So for that, the function that we have to use is, say for example, obj, say 2. If I want to retrieve the shape of the array, the dimensions, I can use the shape function. And when I run that, you'll see I get the dimensions. So when I initialized the object 2, it was of shape 2, 3, right? So I get the same thing, right? Now, if I want to retrieve the size, that also is possible. So let me just print it out. Otherwise, I'll not get the thing. That's and when I get this obj2 dot size, okay, what does it return? So it will return the total number of elements in the array. Okay, so these are the shape array or numpy array dot shape will retrieve you the dimensions of the array, and numpy array dot size will retrieve for you the total number of elements. Now there is one more thing that we need to look out for. Say for example, if I want to this is the array having 2 rows and 3 columns. If you want to like convert it to a 1 row and 6 column, how do I do that? So there is a function called Reshaping Arrow. Let's use that function. Let's see what is coming on. So let me first print just the obj2, okay, and see what it is coming, and then let me print obj2 dot reshape, okay, dot reshape. And what are the parameters of reshape? We have to give the new shape. Say for example I give 1 comma 6, so it should retrieve me an array with 1 row and 6 columns, right? So let me see what's coming out. See, in the first one I'm getting 0 0 0 0 0 0, 2 rows and 3 columns. In the second one I'm getting 1 row and 6 columns, right? You can also use the transpose function if you want to convert the rows to uh, the columns and columns to the rows. That we will use the obj3, because obj3 has very specific values. We will be able to figure out what exactly is coming out. So let me do that. So print obj3 dot, and then I use the function transpose. Let's see what is coming out. Okay, so here I get, so what is the problem? It is saying cannot reshape array to size 8. Okay, okay. obj3, the shape was, I'm using obj3 and I'm using the shape uh, 1 comma 6, right? So see here the problem is when I'm using obj3, I am using obj3, the shape of obj3 is 2 comma 4. But now I'm trying to reshape it to 1 comma 6. So that means I'm trying to convert an array having 2 comma 4, means 2 times 4, 8 elements, to an array having 6 elements. This is not possible. So basically I need to do it using the 1 comma 8. Now this is a perfect thing. Now but here I was trying to do that with the obj4 because that has the pre-filled values, right? So if I do that, okay, and I look at it, so this will have a 1 comma 6, right? And if I do that, and obj4, the original obj4, if I just print it, so you will see now it is fine. But here the transpose, it's just giving an object. So let me just mold it into a different object and then do a print of that transpose, right? So let me do that, and I put it in obj6, and that I mention it as obj3 dot transpose, and here I print obj6. Let's see what is happening, right? So it's now again it is giving me that object, the transpose object. But if I do a dot shape of that and I run that, I will get an error because now it is not of an it is not of type uh, array, right? So the problem which was happening is this transpose is a function, it's not a property. So let's now run it. Now the transpose will give me, sorry, it's obj4, it will give me the right values. And what we will see is in the obj4, original obj4, it had 2 rows and 3 columns. In the transposed version, so the rows become the columns, 23, 56, 48. Now it becomes a column, 23, 56, 48, and the second row 34 12 92, that becomes the second column 34 12 92, right? So this is how we can manipulate the arrays. Either we can reshape them, or what we can do is we can basically transpose the arrays so that the rows becomes the columns and the columns becomes the rows, right? This is how we can manipulate the arrays. Now next what we need to see is, say for example I have a specific array. How do I retrieve the different rows or different columns, or maybe a specific value of a particular element in that array? Okay, so accessing the different rows, columns, and uh, the elements. So say for example, again we work with the object 4 because that has some pre-filled values. So let's just keep a print of the object 4 just for the reference, right? Now say for example, if I want to access a specific row, how do I do that? So I can simply do an object 4 and then within square bracket I mention the index number. So the first row will have an index number of 0, second row has an index number of 1. Let me see, let me just pull up the second row. So here I get the second row, right? So this is for accessing a specific row. Now if you want to access multiple rows, okay, how do you do that? So what you can do is instead of just one row, one row, you can give multiple rows, right? How do you do that? 0 comma 1, 0 comma 1. Now if you try this out, you will see again, no, this is basically you are mentioning the, when you give the 0 comma 1, you are accessing a specific element. So 0th row, the first row, and the second column. Now if you want to access multiple rows, how do you do that? This is not the, for that what you have to do is you have to use two square braces, because the first when you give this means this is indicating the rows that you want to access. Say for example, you want to access these rows. Let me first show this one and then I will show specific rows and specific columns, then I will show that. So let me pull this out. So this is now pulling out both the rows. Okay, now say if I give the same thing, okay, but I just give one more square bracket, comma, and one more square bracket and the same 0 1. What will it do? It will get the first row and the second row, and for the first and second rows it will get the first column and the second column. So it will return a 2 by 2 matrix. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so that is exactly what it is giving. So it is retrieving it is retrieving the first and the second rows. This is the first thing that is giving. Okay, and this, so first one is giving the first row, second row, then I'm getting the first and second rows. Okay, and then after that I'm getting the first row first column, so basically 23, and the second row second column. So this is how I can specify the exact cells but in a combination, right? Now say for example, if I want to pull out all a few columns, specific columns, so how can I do that? Let me just copy paste this and do it. So let me just, for all rows, let me get the first and the second columns, right? So it is going to get me the first and the second columns. So the first column was 2334 and the second column was 5612. Now if I just want to retrieve only the only one column, so just the first column, say, so how do I do that? The same thing, instead of giving a pair of values, I'll just give one value. Say for example, I just want to retrieve the second column of both the rows. Okay, so I will do this. So this will retrieve me only the second column of both the rows, 56 and 12, right? So this is the way we can retrieve specific rows, specific columns, or a combination of rows and columns, like first row first column, second row second column, right? Now if I want to retrieve a specific value, or rather a specific element of the array, how do I do that? So for that, I will have to again use the obj4, okay, and then within the square bracket I may mention the indices, the row index and the column index. Say for example, I want to fetch this 56, so first row and second column, so 0 comma 1, right? So it should get me the 56. Yes, it gives me the 56. This is one way. The other way is also quite simple. Instead of using one single bracket and the indices here itself, I can simply give the row index as one square bracket and then the column index as the other square bracket. And if I run, it will give me the same result. Both of them gives a 56. So this is the way I can access specific elements of an array, right? So I hope that now you get an understanding of how to create an array and how to access specific elements of the array. Now, the other thing is, say for example, I have created a empty array. How do I fill up with values? Or even the normal array, how do I fill up with the value, right? So say for example, this array was the empty array, or obj1 was the empty array, right? Or rather, let me take the obj2. It is initialized with all zeros, right? So let me print the obj2 first. Let me see what it is giving, and then let me access a specific uh, element of that array. So obj2, and then I give the first row and then the second column. Okay, and I put in a value. So was there any particular data type for obj2? I didn't give. Yes, it was an int. So here also I have to give an int. So 34. Okay. So let's do a print after this updation is being done. So print obj2. Let's see what is happening. So the first one, it was having all zeros. Now in the first row, second element, second column, this element I have updated with a 34, right? And then I printed it. So this is working perfectly fine. What would happen if I mention, instead of an integer, if I give a decimal value, say 35, 34.4, 34.5, what will happen? It is going to take the truncated value. Okay, you will not understand for if I give it here. Say for example, let me give a different value, 38.9, right? Now we will make it out. So if I give it, so it will just take that 38. That 0.9, it will simply truncate, right? So this is a particular thing that we have to keep in mind. When we have initialized a particular array with a particular data type, we have to keep in mind when we are updating the elements of that array. Now, let's look at other factor. So how do I, if I have to concatenate two arrays, how can I do that? Let's try to do that. Okay, so let's pick up two arrays. So say for example, obj2 was array having all zeros and obj3 was array having all ones. If I want to concatenate, there are two things that we have to keep in mind. First of all, how do I want to concatenate? Do I want to do a horizontal concatenation? That means we are trying to add the arrays as new rows, or do I want to do a vertical concatenation? That means I want to join the arrays by the columns. So if I want to add the arrays horizontally by the rows, then both the arrays should have the same row count, right? Sorry, same column count, because ultimately there should be a matching column for each of them. And if I am wanting to join or concatenate the arrays vertically by the columns, then they should have the same number of rows. Otherwise, it will throw an error. So let me look at a positive case where it will not throw an error and a negative case where it will throw an error. So as we talked about, first of all, we will check the values of print obj2, and we'll also print the value of obj3. Okay, so both of them being printed. After that, let me try to concatenate and create a different object. Say obj underscore concat. It's a concatenated array, and I will use the numpy function concatenate. Okay, there is a function for doing the concatenate, and here the first parameter or the first argument are the arrays that we want to concatenate. So here we are concatenating only two arrays. Okay, we can give more arrays also. So obj2 comma obj3. And then there is one more parameter, the axis. Either we want to do a vertical or a horizontal concatenation, right? So let me give an axis is equal to 0. Okay, so by default it is 0 also. So let me just give it a 0. What is happening? And let me do a print of the obj underscore concat. Okay, let me run it. So what is happening? It is throwing me a error. Why is it throwing me? Because axis is equal to 0 tries to do a concatenation horizontally. And as you can see, obj2 has 3 columns, obj3 has 4 columns. Number of columns are not matching. That's why the horizontal concatenation is failing. Okay, so what do we have to do? If we really have to concatenate, we have to do a concatenate by the axis is equal to 1. That means vertically. Let me run it and you will see this will get concatenated. See, this gets concatenated. 0, 38, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. Right? Now, if I just do the same thing with the obj4, this will again be fine because obj2 and obj4 both of them have the same dimensions, so they can be concatenated both vertically as well as horizontally. So if I just run this code, it will here I'll have to do a obj4. So now again if I run, it will do a vertical concatenation, right? And if I just give a 0, it will also be able to do a horizontal concatenation. See, here it is getting 4 rows and 3 columns. When we did axis equal to 1, it was giving me 2 rows and 6 columns, right? So this is how you can do concatenation of 2 arrays to create a third array. Okay, so next let's look at how can we convert a particular object of a different data type. Say for example, if I have a list, can I convert that to an array? Let's see that. Okay, so say for example, I first declare a list lst1 is equal to some random value, say 78, 45, 23, 67. Okay, now let me try to create an array. ARR1 is equal to, and then I just do a np dot array. Okay, and I give this object, so this list object lst1 as an input, right? And then I print this ARR1. Let's see what is coming. So I am getting this array. Okay, I am getting this array ARR1 and I am able to do it. Now let's see if I just give a list having heterogeneous elements. So if I give a list having some integers and some say floats, okay, 67.88. So 78, 45.09, 23, 67.88. What is the outcome? Is it able to execute it or what happens? It is still able to do it. What it does is it converts all the elements into floats. Okay, now if I have a list having a few numerical, I mean, so integer or say float, and at least one other data type, say a string, what happens in this case? Is it able to do it? What it does is it converts to all of them, it converts to a string, right? So it takes the data type, all the data types as string, and it converts to an array of strings. So this is what we have to keep in mind again when we are converting a particular object belonging to a different data type to an array. How we can do that? This is the np.array is the function we can do that. But only thing we have to keep in mind are the different types of elements which are there as the elements of the list object, right? We have to keep in mind. So I think we have gone through a lot about the different types of array creation procedures. We can create a empty array, we can create a full array, we can create a array with default zeros, we can create array with all default ones. Now we can also do different types of maneuvers, like we can see the shape of the array, we can transpose the elements of an array, we can concatenate arrays, we can convert different objects of different data types, like a list data type, to an array. So all these are the different things that we can use. Okay, so we'll pause here. When we come back, we'll see the different operations and the different mathematical functions which are supported by NumPy arrays. Okay, so stay tuned.